Marcus, MOSIAH, forward and lead thy people out of Babylon.
They're trying to send us another Moses, but make him lay down there in a him bed of roses. Send him on. They're trying to send us another Jesus Christ, but we want a man to be betrayed for upon our rise. That's the man we really wanna see. They preaching about black unity. They preaching about black dignity. Association and to help black people in their troubled time. Yet still they're trying to send us another Moses fever, making it down there in a him bed of roses. Send him on. They're trying to send us another Jesus Christ, so we want the man they betrayed for upon our rise. That's the man we really wanna see. Go there now. Us to be dignified and proud of being black. He taught us that Africa was where it's at. Moses never knew about that. Yet still they're trying to send us another Moses, but make him lay down there in a him bed of roses. Send him on. They're trying to send us another Jesus Christ, so we want a man to be betrayed for upon our rise. That's the man we really wanna see. Forward to deliver all our we. Send him on. Go there now. Forward. That's the man we really wanna see. Forward to deliver all our we. Send him on.
Drums of MOSIAH on the 17th of MOSIAH, August. We join the international call together with Africans around the world in honor of the birthday of the most honorable Marcus MOSIAH Garvey. Bring your drums, your shekere, agogo, umbira, your balafon, all percussion, and huna on a drum. Bring your dancing feet and join us as we raise the vibration in honor of our ancestors. Taking place on Saturday, the 17th of MOSIAH, August, from 5 p.m. at Windrush Square, Brixton, SW2 1JQ. Drums of MOSIAH. This is an event not to be missed.
Garvey lives. Garvey lives. Garvey lives. MOSIAH lives. MOSIAH lives. MOSIAH lives. We hate him itinerary, sisters and brothers. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the MOSIAH season 62-64, or as some of you may say, 2024. This is the MOSIAH season of MOSIAH, 31 days of praise and veneration of the life legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We give thanks and praises continually. And this is day number 8 of Mosiah. My name is Brother Olatunji Haru. You are on the platform of Kimbunga Media alongside the Al Kebalan Revivalist Movement, sisters and brothers. And we're here for a very exciting session, our first online session of this Mosiah season, 62-64. We give thanks for you. We're going to keep the chat active. We've got a very special guest this evening, sisters and brothers. I want to get to her very, very, very soon. But in the meantime, we want to say that there's certain traditions and formalities and customs we do in the Mosiah season that we started, sisters and brothers, here in the UK in the year so-called 1998. 6238, as we would say, aligned with our Nile Valley ancestry. And what we do every day is an affirmation of the day, sisters and brothers, the Mosiah Daily Affirmation, which is in the official guide to the Mosiah season, drafted and edited by our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka, on whose vision brought us the Mosiah season in that year. So we're going to get straight to it, sisters and brothers. This is day 8. Affirmation for today is entitled Come Out of Yourself, and I'll read the affirmation, which is the word, sounds, and power of the most eminent prophet and king, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, which is followed by an affirmation, a commentary, which has been drafted by a Brother Leader Bandaka. So we're going to get straight to that, sisters and brothers. Then we're going to explain what we're going to be doing this evening. So the affirmation for day 8, sisters and brothers, is right here. Come out of yourself. The chance of rising above the level of unfortunate men and women is for everyone who will ennoble themselves by forcing out the good that is in them. What good you have in you, please bring it out. Nature never made you soulless, characterless, as not to have some virtue that can be brought to the surface. Realize that you have something in you worthwhile. Search yourself and find it. It is a noble character that may mean a noble life to be lived for the blessing of humanity. Make up your mind to come out of yourself and make the world know of you, and make the world know you and of you. You can do it. Such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Say, hail to the prouder word, hail to the prouder word, hail to the prouder word. What we're going to do now, sisters and brothers, is go into the commentary for the affirmation for day 8 by our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka. And it reads, you have many special gifts and qualities that are innate, your birthright, a gift from Wadi, the African god. Therefore, it is never a question as to whether you are gifted. The challenge is always to discover your own gifts and talents and to nurture, channel, and celebrate them towards the building of your community, nation, and race. Shyness and introvertness are states of psychological retardation. They are both un-African and anti-African. We are a proud people. Our culture is rich, it is bold, it is forthright, it is expressive, it is extrovert, it is charismatic. The evidence can be found in our flamboyant songs, music, dances, garments, rituals, ceremonies, languages, etc. Come out of yourself. What is the wisdom of our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka? Say hail to the prouder word, hail to the prouder word, hail to the prouder word, sisters and brothers. What we also do, sisters and brothers, is have a memory verse for our children. Not available here right now, but we say the memory verse. The children say this 3 times each day for each day of the affirmation. And the affirmation memory verse for day 8 is this, is up, you mighty people. You can accomplish whatever you will. If there's any Watotos watching, we can get them to recite that 3 times. Up, you mighty people. You can accomplish whatever you will. Up, you mighty people. You can accomplish whatever you will. Up, you mighty people. You can accomplish whatever you will. Sisters and brothers, we give thanks and praises for that. The affirmations and that memory verse, which is part of the Mosiah tradition, sisters and brothers. We give thanks for those of you that have joined us so far in the Mosiah season, either from our opening ceremony last MOSIAH Day, Babylon Sunday, as we call it, the 4th of MOSIAH, or August, as other people call it. That was our opening ceremony, which featured a message by our young land brother Shakara on Kimbunga. Look for me in the whirlwind. We followed that up again with brother Shakara on Africa Speaks with our Keblan on GalaxyAfiri.net on Kujuguli Day, Monday evening, speaking about the whirlwind once again. And here we are today, sisters and brothers, with the session, the Pan-African Legacy of Booker T. Washington. Coming up next, sisters and brothers, in our community will be this coming Umoja Day, the 11th of MOSIAH, Sunday the 11th of MOSIAH, which is the official launch of the Pan-African People's Parliament, which is going to happen here in London, in Brixton, to be precise, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. We can encourage Africans to come out to build that Parliament in the UK. Our nation building mission is very much necessary, as we see what's happening in the UK right now. Other people are organizing themselves to get their agenda across, and they're having success in doing so, sisters and brothers. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the African agenda? Where is the African voice? You want to know what that is, sisters and brothers? We want to see you there on this coming Sunday, the 11th of MOSIAH, sisters and brothers. So we do want to let you know that we are dealing tonight with the Pan-African legacy of Booker T. Washington. And you'll be asking, sisters and brothers, why are we dealing with Booker T. Washington if it is the season of MOSIAH? So let's share a little passage which we have collected in our MOSIAH Daily Affirmations book, sisters and brothers. This is what we call the making of MOSIAH, a short excerpt from the making of MOSIAH. And the prophet says, I started to take an interest in the politics of my country, and then I saw the injustices done to my race because it was black. I went traveling to South and Central America to find out if it was so elsewhere, and I found the same situation. I sailed to Europe and again found the same stumbling block. You are black. I read the conditions in America. I read Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington, and then my doom of being a race leader dawned upon me. In London, after I had traveled throughout almost half of Europe, I asked, where is the black man and woman's government? Where are their queens, kings, and kingdoms? Where are their presidents, their countries, their ambassadors, their army, their navy, their men and women of big affairs? I saw none. Then I said, I will help make them. So that is the word, sound, and power of the most eminent prophet and king, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And as we saw there, sisters and brothers, it was the example, the message, the testimony of Baba Booker T. Washington that opened the way for Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Saw the light, in his own words, is doom, as he called it, of being a race leader, dawned upon him after reading Up from Slavery. And we know that Booker T. Washington, the founder of the Tuskegee Institute in the US of A, and our guest is a very expert scholar dealing with that subject based on her book, Sisters and Brothers. This very fine book. Booker T. Washington and Africa, the making of a Pan-Africanist, sisters and brothers. Excellent book there by our sister, Dr. Tyrene Wright. And while we wait for her to join us, let's give you a bit of background about our guest this evening, Sister Tyrene Wright. Dr. Tyrene Wright is a scholar, an author of the book Booker T. Washington and Africa, the making of a Pan-Africanist. Dr. Wright's research began over a decade ago and has evolved into this paradigm-shifting book on Washington's evolution as a Pan-Africanist and his role in African affairs. The book offers a corrective to the dominant narrative of Washington and the accommodationist, pacifist, and Uncle Tom that historians have defined him as. It revisits the Tuskegee model, its founding, the mission, and Washington's efforts to export it to Africa as a model of sustainability for African communities. Dr. Wright's pivotal work has changed the discourse on Booker T. Washington forever. Our sister, Dr. Tyrene Wright, teaches at the City University of New York. He's a founder and publisher of Global Africa Press and founder of the African Women for Africa, AWA, which is an NGO. One of the good ones, I should say, sisters and brothers, the NGO. There's some that aren't so good. But yeah, one of the good NGOs that we have, sister and brother. We're waiting for our sister to join us, and we are going to look forward also to other events in the MOSIAH season. I have mentioned already this coming MOSIAH Day, which is the official launch of the Pan-African People's Parliament, sisters and brothers, which is going to be happening, let's say, this coming MOSIAH Day. And that's going to be at the Caribou Centre, Gresham Road, London, SW9. You would have heard at the start of the broadcast as well the promotion for the drums of MOSIAH happening on the 17th day, the Earth Day of the Prophet, 17th day of MOSIAH sisters and brothers. That's going to be again in Brixton, Winmer Square, this time between 5 and 8 p.m., synchronizing with the UNA family in the USA and in Seattle. We're saying on that day, bring your drums, bring your shekere, your mbira, whatever percussion instrument you have. If you don't have percussion, bring your dancing feet and your chanting voices. We're going to sing praises to the Prophet on his earth strong, the 17th of MOSIAH or August. That's going to be at 5 p.m. at Windrush Square, sisters and brothers. We are looking forward to that. For more information about any Al-Kebalan events during the MOSIAH season, please go to alkebalan.org. Remembering that we have every Kujigoli day, every Monday evening between 7 and 10 p.m. Africa Speaks with Al-Kebalan on galaxyafiwi.net, the only the brainwashing station. So tune in, sisters and brothers, every Monday evening between 7 and 10. And we're going to be carrying the MOSIAH vibration forward into the universe, and so that our people can know the glory of the MOSIAH in this season. So we give thanks and praises, sisters and brothers, for that. Very important that we cover the legacy, as we just said in our intro, brief bio of our sister, the legacy of Booker T. Washington. We do know that there is a certain perception of him that has been fostered by certain forces and elements, both from within and from without. And we're going to challenge some of that tonight, sisters and brothers. We do know that Booker T, a very important institution builder in our history, and we do want to let our people know that it's going to be a very exciting. Just heard a message of our sister. She is coming in and joining us now, sisters and brothers. So just bear with us. We're going to get straight to it. We know it's a late one tonight, sisters and brothers. Not normally doing sessions this late, so hope you're able to stay the course. We'll keep it tight, but it's going to be very, very meaningful, sisters and brothers, because our sister has a great deal to say, a very powerful sister we're going to have with us this evening. So we're going to let her come forward and speak about the book and the journey into getting it published, the context for it, and why it's so important and valuable for us, because we need to be writing our own history from our own perspective, as you're going to hear some of the people trying to misrepresent the legacy of Booker T. Washington. We're going to reclaim him as one of our sisters and brothers. We certainly are. So yes, just waiting for sisters to organize and prepare herself. And then we are going to get underway with the session this evening. I want to give thanks and praises to all of you. I give thanks and praises to Kimbunga Media and Director Brother Shakara. Hope you're tuned in on this Ujima Tuesday evening for the scientific Garveyism Part 2 reasoning, and we'll catch Kimbunga every Ujima every Tuesday evening between 8 and 10 for some MOSIAH vibrations. Obviously, anything else, we'll let the word get the word out, sisters and brothers. But certainly, we say this season. We know in the US, people call it Black August. We say it's MOSIAH, but it's certainly a month that historically is one of great heightened activity, be it in the motherland, be it in the UK, US of A, be it indeed in the revolutionary island of Haiti. And we honor and remember the Boakeman ceremony back in 1791 that initiated the final phase of the Haitian revolution, sisters and brothers. So we have to remember that this month is a very special month, significant for so many, many reasons. So we are going to ensure that you full enjoy the ceremonies and festivities that we have going on this month. As I said, for more details, more information, just go to ourkebalan.org for all MOSIAH related events, sisters and brothers. As they come in, we'll be updating the website. So we give thanks and praises for that, sisters and brothers. So yes, want to be sisters and brothers. We can't wait for our sister to join us. It's gonna be good. If you haven't heard of this book, we encourage you, implore you to get it. Sisters and brothers, I have to say this session is many, many years overdue, but it's a book. Once we heard about the book, we had to get the copy. It was a struggle getting it at the time, but since we've got it, it's an invaluable read, and what it also is a very engaging read as well, sisters and brothers. A very engaging read. So, not only for adults, young people can get into it too. So our sister is here, and I think we can bring her through right now, sisters and brothers, and introduce her to you. So we are honored to have her on the platform this evening. Hey.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
Sister. We can hear you very well, loud and clear. We're honored to have you. I was just saying to our listeners, this session is years overdue. I remember the struggle we had trying to get hold of the book. It ended up being my cousin who was in New York. I had to link up with you to pick up copies of the book to bring over here. So all of that. Hope you tuned in, Tony. So yeah, so, and I was saying to the viewers as well, such an important book, because for a lot of us, our introduction to Booker T. Washington was this accommodationist, this sellout, this someone who just buckled in the face of white power, and many in certain parts, from within and from without, have that viewpoint. I think for me, with hearing a message by our Baba John Henrik Clark, master teacher, he basically said in the message, we need to reevaluate the legacy of Booker T. Washington. So that started me thinking. But even then, there wasn't much that had an alternative viewpoint. Then I saw your book. And I thought, right, this is what we've been looking for. And we're just glad that you wrote the book. And even, so I just wanted to really just to present, sis, just to share why you felt the need to write this book, the journey of writing the book, and also the response to the book. Because I know there's elements in our community still, you hear them saying about, they use Booker T. Washington almost like as a synonym for sellout. Yes. Even today.
Yeah.
So our family know really what inspired you to write the book, and actually, yeah, the process, the challenges, and the response.
Okay. So first, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show. I appreciate the invitation. I was rushing to make this happen too because I'm a professor. I teach for the City University of New York, and so it's the last day of summer school, and I taught. I rarely teach summer school, and this year I did. So I was running to get here. So thank you again for the invitation and
No
opportunity.
problem.
So why did I write the book? I wrote the book because, so to take it back, I I was a graduate student at one time. I wrote my master's thesis on Booker T. Washington in Africa, in African policy. I think it was the title. But the point is it was very, very, very early information that is in this book. But the book is totally different from the dissertation, a thesis, totally different, right? However, my research on Washington in Africa started way back then because in having written, actually wrote a thesis on the necessity of armed struggle in settler colonies in Africa, specifically Kenya. And my graduate advisor, who I won't say his name but he arrived late after I had finished all of this research on the topic and said, "Oh, you don't have enough primary sources, like living people, to substantiate what you're saying." And I was annoyed. And so I said, okay, well, I'll have to go back to the drawing board on my thesis, although I was very far into this particular research topic. In just doing research in general on that period in Africa, I ran across an article called Booker T. Washington and African Nationalism. And it is written by, you could still find it in academic databases. It's written by none other than Manning Marable, the late Manning Marable. And I had never heard, I am a Tuskegee alumni, okay? So and I was a history major at Tuskegee. So if those of you don't know, Tuskegee is the school that Booker T. Washington was the first principal of, okay? And he's charged overwhelmingly as the founder, but he's not really the founder of Tuskegee, but he was certainly the first principal and the person who raised Tuskegee. I would say he's the father of Tuskegee. He raised it. That being said, I had never heard anything about Booker T. Washington in Africa at Tuskegee from some of the most knowledgeable historians. And so I read the article and I said, okay, let me see all of these sources they're talking about. So I decided, because Manning Marable, he doesn't do, while he's well known as a historian, he doesn't do it due diligence. He pretty much gives you a survey of Washington's relationships with various African nationalists, and then he says it means nothing. And he also, but then he says something contradicting that. He says, Tuskegee and Booker T. Washington always had guarded support for African nationalism. And I thought, like, how peculiar. On one end, you're saying these relationships Washington had with African nationalists, like founding members of the ANC in South Africa, and Duzé Muhammad Ali, a well-known activist and writer who was involved with Garvey and distributing his own paper, the African Times and Orient Review. You're saying that none of this means anything, but Tuskegee had guarded support for African nationalism. So I go to the source of all of this, which is the Booker T. Washington papers. Washington's personal papers were edited back in 1970s and opened up to the public through the Library of Congress in the United States, and they were edited by a man named Lewis Harlan. He got a big grant. He's an Anglo-American, white American, Caucasian person. And he did not like Booker T. Washington, but he saw there was a great opportunity for him as a historian and researcher. And he proceeds to take on editing Washington's personal papers, which are its colossal collection. Published, it is 15 volumes, each volume anywhere between 300 to 500 pages of straight correspondence. So you really would have to know what you're looking at to figure out who is he writing to. You know, everyone in there is deceased. So, you know, Lewis Harlan did that. I go back. I take the citations from this article and I go back to the Booker T. Washington papers and I start to look at each and every letter and piece of correspondence between Washington and all of these various African nationalists on the continent and throughout the African world, really. And from that, I see that this is actually not what Manning Marable said. It's far more. And Manning Marable, I'm just going to be blunt, just didn't have the courage to say anything different than other historians have said. So there are others, that particular historian, Lewis Harlan, who is, like I said, Caucasian. And Manning Marable was African American. He wasn't just African American. He had worked at Tuskegee University in the 70s. And he also had deep roots in Tuskegee. His family owned significant portions of land and properties in Tuskegee to the point where a property right next to the institution, which was a housing complex, was owned by Manning Marable's family, and it was called, while I was a student there, the Marables. So he knew quite a bit about Tuskegee. I would consider him, I'm not sure if he was a Tuskegee native, but he had significant roots in Tuskegee and still does. His family, I'm sure, is still there. That property I'm speaking of has since been bought by the institution, but they own a great deal and have always owned a great deal of properties in and around the city of Tuskegee and Macon County, where Tuskegee is. So that's what put me on this search of Washington and Africa, because out of these 15 volumes of the Booker T. Washington papers, I start to, you know, I get an understanding of the landscape, and I start to raise everything that is related to Africa and African nationalism.
Right. I can't hear you for some reason at the moment, Doctor. Right? I'm not sure what's going on. But I can't hear you. Then if anyone else, Shakara, can you hear? Yeah. There's no sound at the moment. I don't know if it's my No, it's my laptop. Carry on. Because I'm listening to another device. I can hear sound coming through there. So yeah, carry on.
Sorry, family. The audience is also reporting that the sound has gone, so it's not just you, brother Olatunji.
Right. Okay. Oh. Right.
So yeah, Doctor Wright, your sound seems to have dropped out, so we can't hear you. Try. It might be an idea to try leaving and coming back in. So leaving the stream and coming back in, that might fix things. Sometimes it's just a. All right, so try that.
Sisters and brothers, when you do it live, the gremlins sometimes do come out, but we can't be defeated. So yeah, but it's lining up for something special, sisters and brothers, as you've heard already. The little bit we've heard so far, there has been so much. Also, some parallels as well, which we're certainly gonna get into. That she's they don't seem to change the script very much. The approach to how they represent the history of our people, in terms of what she said so far, some parallels with the Eminent Prophet spring to mind, as well as Omwale Malcolm X, the Spirit and Mission Child, spring to mind as well, sisters and brothers. So we're going to get into that in our reading, in our discussion. So we certainly do want to make sure we stay tuned for the duration of this session, sisters and brothers. The chat and see if there's anybody, any questions so far from what we're hearing. We do hope our sister joins us back very, very soon. But I want to give thanks and praises to Rich Senator. Greetings, Rich African Elder, Baba Rich. Remembering ancestors Jonathan and George Jackson. Yes, Black August and the revolutionaries George and Jonathan Jackson. Remember their names, sisters and brothers. And here she is again, back with us. Right. I still can't hear you. Right. What is happening? Yeah. You can hear us, right? But yeah, we can't hear you. And it doesn't say that you're muted. And it was working fine. So I'm not sure. Technical support from Shakara. Shakara, any suggestions of what we can do? Dr. Wright has left us and rejoined us.
Unfortunately not. I'm still checking. There are some mic settings that I can edit, but I can't fix the mic. Yeah, for anybody else other than myself. So I'm not sure what has happened here.
Because my laptop is old, I thought it was my end. But, So,
that's yeah, I've never seen something like this.
Right. Yeah, my lip reading skills.
My lip reading skills are not terrible. I think what Dr. Wright said, she's going to try and come in on her phone.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. All right. So, brothers, yeah, it looks like she's frozen anyway. So let's have a look and see who else we've got in the house. Eyes wide shut. In Greenwich Mean Time, give thanks. Eyes wide shut. Is that Jadarian Chimarenga? Strength and honor. And back to you, Jadarian. I hope I said that correctly. Kai Bandaka, tender my watching from UK. Give thanks and praises. Vincent Henry. Dr. Wright will get this to Dr. Wright when she's back and can hear us. Well, when we can hear her. Can you cite the speech made in the US Congress by Congressman who said that blacks had surpassed whites from emancipation in the 1910s? Taking questions in the chat. Yes, that's good. So that's a question for our sister later on. Yep, hit up Christy Cosmetics. Yes, no sound. You see, these things happen when the message is serious, sisters and brothers. They don't need to hear the truth, but we're going to persevere. We're going to get around this, even if it's using their technology. That's really the message. We need to create our own things, our own platforms, everything. Hopeful. I mean, unless say the mic automatically mutes itself. I don't think he's muted the mic, so let's see some AI business going on. So we don't want the people in the UK to hear the business. So yeah. Thank you, thanks and praise. Just to let you know, sisters and brothers around the world, we're here in the UK. We're safe. We know there's been some interesting news going around the world about what's happening here in England and them, but we're okay, sisters and brothers. We're fine, and we are organising to repel this beast, even if they say it's their country. That's what we're gonna do, sisters and brothers. So yeah. So yeah, so we have a question already in the chat. So just to remind you, sisters and brothers, any questions in the chat later on, when we get to the main Rich African Elder, yes, wouldn't be surprising, sister and brother, Rich African Elder, because they do want to try and keep us ignorant. They do want to try and make sure we don't know the truth, and certainly they've tried very hard over the years to keep us from knowledge of Washington. Right. We have, yes, I think,
I'm
on the phone.
okay.
Right, I think you may just shut the laptop off as well, sis, because I think that's where we're getting some feedback as well.
Turn this on.
You on the phone?
Okay. All right. So I'm on my phone. We persevere.
No problem, my sister. No problem. We're resourceful. So yeah, let us just hand back to you, and you can take us forward. If you remember where you're at.
Yes. So so basically, I'm able to construct these cases, and my thesis, like I said, was a very early version of this work, so the cases weren't formulated. But then, I write the thesis, and then I move, and years later, I'm pursuing my doctorate, and someone on my committee read my thesis. And he said, you don't need to do anything else. You need to go back to this. I think there's more to be said about Washington and Africa. And so I said, really, you think, I should go back to this? And he said, yeah. So as I go back to it, I get a clearer picture of the cases and more detail and, corroborating information. And then I write the dissertation on Booker T. Washington and African policy. So, but then that's that. I'm aware of certain things and maybe that I want to write a book about it, but I still don't do that immediately after I finish my doctorate. So my background is history, but then a lot of my graduate work is on the political history of Africa. And so my PhD is actually in public policy. And so time passes and I begin to write the book. The book is not working because there's something very clear about everything I understand at that stage, which is that Booker T. Washington, in fact, was not a Pan-Africanist by ringing declaration in word, but in practice. And so I'm very clear about that because I'm seeing the personal correspondence, the stuff that has never come into the public realm before the editing of his personal papers. So I'm clear on what the situation is, his sentiment. And so as I start to write the book, though, I'm, theorizing takes great courage if you're saying something that people have not said before. So ultimately, I wrote this book 3 times. And the last, I was so sick of it, to be quite frank with you, because I had to be able to present
all the evidence, which was a huge amount of evidence by this time, but the context, the theoretical aspect of it. Am I willing to say Booker T. Washington was a Pan-Africanist? So it was a lot of personal struggle in terms of that. And ultimately, I had a dream or something. And when I woke up, I had generally the answer just was that I had to write the book without fear of what anybody would say, fear of whatever backlash, because I had already, on many occasions in academic conferences presented some of what would end up in the book, and a rumble would just go through the audience. I mean, it would be like, say 10 people are on the line for Q&A. All 10, even if there are other panelists, would be for me because they're like, what are you talking about? Washington is a Pan-African. What are you saying? What do you and because particularly in the United States, Du Bois is the premier and ultimate scholar, activist, Pan-Africanist, of course. And, this does not refute that Du Bois was all of that. However, this shows you what Washington's true position was. And I even addressed their real relationship, because what we know about their relationship in the public realm is not quite accurate. Du Bois intentionally misrepresented his sort of conflict with Washington. It really wasn't a conflict per se. So that being said, I knew that there would be a certain response, but I also knew that the controversy of it all would draw people into it, because this is what has not been done. I couldn't believe really when I was suffering from some levels of fear around asserting that he was a Pan-Africanist. I couldn't believe how lucky I was that these guys before me had left this so wide open for me to come and raise up all of this information. So it was a researcher's delight, a historian's delight, as far as that's concerned, if you have the courage to do it, right? And there was, so I write the book the third and final time without fear. So the message I got in my dream was to write the book without fear. And I wrote the book without fear and without a thought as to what anybody would have to say about it or anything, because the research the evidence and the research goes right back to Washington himself, his personal papers, his own words, his own activity. No secondary, there's secondary sources, corroborating sources, but the primary source of all the information is Washington's own words and written word and correspondence. And so I knew that it was, in terms of the integrity of the research and the position, I knew that it was beyond reproach. I'm just going to be honest. It's such a huge collection, but I had prior to that some knowledge of the landscape, having been a history major at Tuskegee, and having had access to some things other people didn't have access to while a student through the head archivist at Tuskegee. And then I also had some support from the assistant archivist who would come after the head archivist, Dr. Danny Williams. Then I had, Mrs. Wilson, who followed him, who had been there when Lewis Harlan edited Washington's personal papers. And then I also had the blessing of very senior historians at Tuskegee who taught me and gave me access to a lot of things that I was able to do. So I was doing graduate level work when I was an undergraduate student at Tuskegee. And one of the people who helped me do this, and even when I'm writing the book, he is mentoring me, was a professor by the name of Frank Tolan. And he came to Tuskegee as a professor when George Washington Carver was still there. And so by the time I get there, he's in his late 70s. And by the time I'm doing my dissertation, he is in his very early, he died the next year. He was 91 and taught till he was 91 and passed away at 92. So I understood too, I was getting human affirming about the path I was taking. I was doing the grunge work, but I had serious support in terms of, you know, for advancing my research, because I was going against at least 100 years of written history about Washington. So that's the long route to your answer. That's the scenic route to your question about how and why I write the book, you know. And so, you know, the book followed the dissertation, but the dissertation followed, the book followed the dissertation, but the book is a whole different entity. You know, I get into it's a whole rewrite, and I get deep into the history of Pan-Africanism, Washington's role in it, the Tuskegee model, the infamous case of the Togo and all of Washington's relationships with African nationalists, the African exclusion measure, which is a very important case around African immigration, Black immigration to the United States, and Washington's efforts to debunk and successfully challenge that piece of racist legislation. And then, of course, finally, the Liberian crisis, where Washington is the key negotiator in an effort to preserve Liberia. And he successfully does that. So all of those cases, you know, they really come together in the book pretty much, you know. So that's it. Are you there? Uh-oh. Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Hold on. I've got my laptop issues now.
I can't see you in this format. Okay, I see you now.
I am here, but my laptop is playing up as well now.
Okay. Well, so did you get most of what I said?
Just trying to get my sound back again.
Okay.
Right. Boy, worries today. For some reason, let me
So we have good sound.
Let me do it this way.
Drums of MOSIAH on the 17th of MOSIAH, August. We join the international call to gather with Africans around the world in honor of the birthday of the most honorable Marcus MOSIAH Garvey. Bring your drums, your shekere, agogo, umbira, your balafon, all percussion, and huna on a drum. Bring your dancing feet and join us as we raise the vibration in honor of our ancestors. Taking place on Saturday, the 17th of MOSIAH, August, from 5 p.m. at Windrush Square, Brixton, SW2 1JQ. Drums of MOSIAH. This is an event not to be missed.
Right. Let me try and organize this properly. Same issue. My laptop suddenly I couldn't get the sound.
Oh wow.
So I'm on my phone now. So that's what happened. I don't know what's happening, but it certainly is. Yeah. Interesting. I'm trying to center myself in. There you go, in the microphone. So yeah, it looks a bit weird, but let me try and sit myself differently so that I can doesn't look as weird. So yes, it's a give thanks for that. What I think is striking is some of the parallels that we've heard from what you've. Can you hear me, sis?
Yes, I hear you well.
Oh, good. Let me turn this up anyway. Yeah, because especially when you're speaking about, well, with Manning Marable, it's interesting because we do know that there was some controversy about the Malcolm X biography, A Life of Reinvention. I was going to think of the response there, and some of the things that, some issues with that, and obviously he passed away before it came out. So there's that.
Yes.
And I think, and even with the Lewis Harlan thing, and we think of one of the key people associated with Marcus Garvey, i.e. Robert Hill. And there are some sources that say similarly, he had a very little regard for Marcus Garvey, in spite of being in possession of a lot of the UNI papers. He had a lot of issues, so even the parallels there. But one thing you said when you're speaking about Marable, about him not perhaps having the and you kind of alluded to later on, but I want to speak to it explicitly.
The courage.
Not having the courage. So what courage would you need to have? Or why would you need courage to put out that narrative about Booker T. Washington?
Well, so there's something very specific that has. So you have the book. So you're okay. So so the answer is actually in the book, and the reason why someone would need courage to do that is because there's been something very specific that has happened in the academy in the U.S. with Booker T. Washington. So the person I mentioned, Lewis Harlan, he was the primary biographer of Booker T. Washington. He preserved Washington's personal papers. He would write a number of articles, including an article called Booker T. Washington and the White Man's Burden. However, he was a Caucasian scholar who openly talked about hating Booker T. Washington. And he also was in a line of scholars who adopted the Du Boisian perspective on Booker T. Washington. And so there was a well-established tradition of maligning Booker T. Washington in the academy and not really doing a significant amount of research. Now, what does this go back to? This goes back to this whole thing about the programmatic difference between Du Bois and Washington. And what I uncovered, because although my focus, so my concentration, my expertise is in a very specific field as it relates to Washington, and that is his international and international activity and his role in Africa in particular. However, in order to do that research, I still have to have a context, and I have probably seen more than most on his domestic position and his domestic relations with people who are in the U.S. and affiliated with the U.S. And so by proximity, I am fully aware. So in the book, you'll see Du Bois' first letter to Booker T. Washington asking for a job and all of this kind of stuff. That being said, things like that, Washington's personal papers and words and letters about Du Bois and Du Bois' letters to Washington established for me that the relationship on a public level was not what it seemed, meaning that there was no programmatic dispute between them, because Tuskegee was never a school, industrial and vocational school. It is a school for teachers and always was. So Du Bois decides to, in essence, lie in souls of Black folks. And instead of talking about his real issue with Booker T. Washington, which was not Tuskegee's program or Tuskegee's Washington's programmatic position, it was in fact the Tuskegee machine, a secret network that Washington had at his disposal. The Du Bois decides to talk about this pseudo programmatic difference, the talented 10th versus vocational and industrial education instead. So, you know, he chose not to sort of probably air out his real dirty laundry with Booker T. Washington, okay? But later on, he does write about it after Washington is dead in an essay called My Personal Relations with Booker T. Washington and Others. So this is not my opinion. This is a fact. Du Bois would later on openly say in this essay, and the citation is in the book, that there was very little difference between them. He knew, you know, that it's not the programmatic difference. There is no programmatic difference, because if there were, Du Bois would have never tried to get a job at Tuskegee on two separate occasions that can be documented. Really, it's more than that, but two are documented in the book. Tuskegee was always a school for teachers, always taught the academics. He offers to teach history, social sciences, all of that. And we have pedagogy from the time of its inception. And who studies pedagogy? Teachers. Only teachers study pedagogy, right? People who are trying to transfer knowledge. So Du Bois knew that. In this essay, he goes on to say that the real issue is the Tuskegee machine that Washington had at his disposal, which a secret network of power brokers who Washington had at his disposal and gave him significant power. And that was a big deal, because Washington would use the Tuskegee machine in both of the cases that I discussed in the book. And in the final case, the African exclusion measure, it is that significant vehicle that Washington has at his disposal, this secret network, that would determine his ability to defeat the African exclusion measure successfully. Du Bois, Monroe Trotter, others who were opponents of Washington were all aligned and on the same page about this racist piece of legislation that the Senate passed and took to make part of immigration policy in 1915. However, it was only Booker T. Washington who had any measure of power at that time to effectively have it thrown out and defeated in the Congress. Du Bois wasn't able to do that. Trotter wasn't able to do that. You know, so there's great irony in their lives and their story, because the very thing that Du Bois was angry about. And so let me just be very specific. The Tuskegee machine, once again, was a secret network. And Du Bois' real issue was that he saw Washington use this vehicle, this secret network, to silence people who did not agree with him, to advance his interests one way or another as related to Black people. And Du Bois being a much younger individual than Washington, because they were contemporaries, but they were not peers. Washington, you know, we can estimate significantly older than him, although not really an old man himself, right? Washington would die relatively young. But he was older than Du Bois, and Du Bois could just imagine Washington silencing him if he did not agree with him. And he didn't like that. He was very clear about that. It angered him, but it also, he probably was a little bit jealous because Du Bois would go on to create a secret network of his own, the Boule, of men who are supposed to be, powerful and movers and shakers in their industries and fields. But it never rises to the level of Washington's secret network called the Tuskegee Machine, because Washington is able to change the political landscape. And even with the same vehicle, he is able to negotiate the fate of an African nation. So so all of these things, out of Du Bois's disdain for the Tuskegee Machine and his pseudo conflict with Washington, you come a line of scholars from Du Bois, and then there's Van Woodward, and then from Van Woodward comes none other than Lewis Harlan, a white man, but a white man who has the audacity to talk about or put value or detract from any Black person as though he could know what it was like to live at that time, have that experience, all of that. And he did that wrong. But we never. Okay. Yeah. So Lewis Harlan is, comes in the Du Boisian tradition, and he advances these myths and pseudo conflicts. And, you have other people who feed off of this. Ultimately, what is established in the academy is the idea that, that what Harlan said was true about Washington, given his academic tradition he comes out of, the Du Boisian tradition. And they write enough about this pseudo conflict and about Washington's acquiescence to white power in America that it almost becomes true, although it was not true, right? None of them, even Lewis Harlan, who would edit Washington's personal papers and make a career off of a person he says he hated, he would have numerous errors in the Booker T. Washington papers editorial notes. Now, lucky for me, I knew the head of the archives who oversaw what Harlan was doing, and that was Dr. Danny Williams. And I also knew and still know, his assistant archivist, who would then become the archivist, Mrs. Wilson at Tuskegee. And they conclusively said that Harlan wasn't committed to the project. He couldn't care less if he was flawed in his editorial notes of Booker T. Washington's papers. And because I found many errors and flaws and, just misrepresentation. Luckily, he cannot lie about the transcription because the letters actually exist. But he could put editorial notes that aren't particularly true or inaccurate. And I found all of those things as well. So I had human sources of understanding how deep the situation went with the Du Bois and Washington thing. And so that scholars that would come afterwards would be sent the message on many levels that you just don't touch Booker T. Washington. You can't rescue that. And so we don't touch it. We allow Anglo-American, white American, Caucasian scholars to define Booker T. Washington, his legacy, and everything related to that, and him without reproach. And so then there's me. Then here I go. Right? And so.
Right. We did things a little further harder because didn't even a whole lot of words we work on putting the Washington. So he doesn't care, doesn't like him, but he made it name off of his work.
Sorry, brother Alexander, your sound is entirely muffled.
Audio is a little off.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can't hear you very clearly at all. It's like the mic is overcooked, so we're hearing too much sound and a lot of distortion.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. Let me try this.
It's like
All right, brothers and sisters, we'll be back after these messages.
Is that any better?
No,
No.
not at all.
Oh.
No.
All right, let me try this. So today is a very interesting day. Wow. Oh, nope, it's not that.
Why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what? Centeredness. So right at this moment, when we are beginning to coalesce and to develop a concept of African identity and Afrocentrism, we are all now suddenly in a what? Identity crisis. Is the identity crisis really there, or is what going on an attempt to do what? Create an identity crisis? Because these people are well aware of what a full and wholesome identity will do to them. And they are aware that an African-centered identity represents the end of white power and of white oppression.
Yeah.
it's a lot of interference. I wonder if this has anything to go on, anything to do with what's going on in the UK. You have to tell me about that.
Right. Let's try again.
Oh,
let me
it's
yeah.
perfect.
Let me just turn this off again. Wow, today is really one of those days. I think I just need to leave the laptop altogether because that's what's giving me the hassle. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, class. It seems to be the laptop that's causing all the problems. So let me just
Okay.
let me discard that altogether because it's not really working out. It's just it looks a bit weird on my phone. There you go. Right, the question really begs, you can't allude to it. Why? In terms of the idea of you don't study Booker T, you alluded to that Du Bois was maybe a bit of jealousy. But surely it must go beyond him in terms of actually this whole intergenerational narrative. What's behind? Who's doing it? What's behind it? Why is it being done? And who benefits from it?
So I explain that too, sort of in the book. Well, if you can tell people that Washington, there was, nothing there, nothing to look at. You miss out on the Tuskegee model, the sustainable model that was Tuskegee, that was being exported throughout the African world. You miss out on the principles that was Tuskegee, independence through industry, which it played very different on the continent than it would in the US. In the US, it would ensure that we would have some measure of control of our communities. But on the continent of Africa, it could lead to struggles around independence and for the territories. What Washington was exporting, once perfected at Tuskegee, was nation management skills. Okay, so I'll give you a little quote from a book. There was a journalist out of Chicago, and he was looking at Tuskegee, and he realized what it was, and he began to write about it. And there's a whole chapter in the book called The Tuskegee Model in Africa. And even that has been shamefully misrepresented, because we've allowed other people to redefine the Tuskegee model or define the Tuskegee model. Matter of fact, I'm writing something right now that's going specifically to the academic world around what the Tuskegee model is and was. So it's here in the book, but I sort of engaged in a little bit of a revolutionary endeavor with production of this book. So I was not talking to the academy, although it's an academic format. So, but I'm in the process of addressing them now, because this miscarriage of interpretation of Washington and historical facts is really to be placed squarely on the academicians, right? That being said, this is what one journalist said about Tuskegee. He said, Tuskegee is not a school in the ordinary sense of the word. It's a city in itself, a community that dominates a whole county. It's a great industrial plant with 40 trades and industries that consumes all its own products, that erects its own buildings, first making its own bricks, that grows its own food, makes its own clothes, writes and prints its own textbooks, all by way of education. So at Tuskegee, what Washington was doing was perfecting a sustainable model. Yes, it's a school for teachers that taught the academics, but also had the industries, which those teachers could choose 2 industries to perfect and then go on to teach themselves. So this is why I'm, hence my response about what Tuskegee was in terms of industrial vocational school. It was never that simply of industrial vocational school. It produced more college educated Black people than anything, but those people would be institution builders and industry leaders as well. And so, once he perfects this model, the sustainable model that was Tuskegee, he seeks to export the methods throughout the world, through graduates from Tuskegee, through international students, and then through others who are just affiliated with Tuskegee and the Tuskegee model. So if you can negate Washington, you also could get people to turn away from what he was actually doing. On one hand, here's Du Bois promoting this talented 10th concept, so the elites and the intelligentsia of the Black community are going to educate themselves in the sciences, social sciences, and academics, and they would enter the establishment and raise up the race through that. Now, we already know that didn't work, because we just know it hasn't worked. I don't want to call names and give examples, but we know that whatever you might think of as the elites of Black America, if that was the deal, to raise up the masses through them, then they have already forfeited. That being said, Washington's program wasn't such. His idea was that we would become self-sufficient and industry builders, meaning that we would own and operate our own industries in every way. So there were 44 industries at Tuskegee, okay, on the land, the property, the institution.
Right.
And
44.
44.
Okay. Just so we hear that, 44.
I wasn't able to recover all of them, but I tell you a number of them in the book. Mm-hmm. Should I continue? Yeah. So there's about 44 industries at Tuskegee, And there is a programmatic aversion to producing simply raw material or unfinished products. So when you engaged in whatever industries you chose to study, you had to produce a finished product. Not simply, so if you were in wheelwrighting, you needed to produce a wagon. If you were in shoemaking, you couldn't make a sole of a shoe, you had to make a shoe. All of that. So I had some insight into this because I heard an old adage when I was a student at Tuskegee, where we would joke about students who came to the institution long before us, who in fact built the buildings that are right there and on the campus to this day. And the adage was, when a student was preparing to come to Tuskegee, they would say, leave your underwear at home. We make our own at Tuskegee. In other words, whatever was a human necessity for man, woman, and child, we actually could make it ourselves and did so. And so if you negate Washington, then you negate the Tuskegee model and all it had to offer. You would be an agent in the establishment as opposed to a master of your industry, right? And, so all of those things go out the window if you negate Washington. And we did lose out on all of those things, because you always hear it in the present context. Anytime something happens with us, in the United States in particular, you hear, well, let's boycott, let's keep our money, let's, well, Washington was all about that. Yes, he got a great deal of money from white philanthropists. And once he got it, he injected it into this sustainable African community called Tuskegee. And it went around and around and around and around and around. So he was an unusual person in that respect. He is negotiating with U.S. presidents, and the personal correspondence and communication is astounding, because he's not talking to them like he's some lowly former slave. He is talking to them very much in a way where he makes demands. An interesting scenario is with the Liberian case. He is advisor to Theodore Roosevelt at the time, and he dares to threaten Roosevelt in order to get what he needs for Liberia. And how does he do this? It is election time in the United States, and this is around the transition from Theodore Roosevelt to Taft. And Booker T. Washington writes to Theodore Roosevelt, and the Liberian crisis is already underway. And he says to Roosevelt, whatever you do or fail to do for Liberia will be remembered by the 4 million Negroes, unfortunately uses that word, in this country at voting time. And so what is he doing? He's daring to leverage the Black vote to the benefit of Liberia. Okay. And so this is in stark contrast to what people say about Washington. He didn't believe in voting. He didn't believe in social and civil rights. He didn't believe in political power for the Black masses. That's not true, because you see him leverage that very thing with regard to Liberia, and trying to twist the arm ever so gently or harshly of Theodore Roosevelt in order to get what he needs for Liberia. And he ultimately does. It's a sprawling case, but he gets what he needs, and that to the extent that it allows Liberia to survive the threat of annexation by the French and the British, who wanted the territory. So, but you lose all of that if you slander him, malign him, and say he was just an Uncle Tom, an accommodationist, and nothing else, nothing to see here, right? And they actually know there was a great deal to see there, But did you get to chapter 3, the chapter I just mentioned, the Tuskegee model in Africa?
Yes, I
You
did.
did. And so I
Yeah.
opened that chapter up with a very controversial quote by a controversial figure named Thomas Dixon. I hope you saw that, because Thomas Dixon
The writer,
is
yeah.
is
But
influential.
yeah.
Right. So that to give you an understanding of why someone would malign Washington. Yes, it would be just precisely that, because of what he was up to, right?
Yeah.
Some whites knew what he was up to, Thomas Dixon is more right than not about that. And but he is attempting to, like people do on social media, air somebody out, put them out there, and just tell everything. That's what Thomas Dixon is doing, because he feels that Booker T. Washington has Southern whites fooled, that he was a non-threatening person, that his program, he was just about, producing manual laborers, who didn't do any thinking. And he's saying to them, no, this guy that you think is so, benign, and, no threat to you, he is producing masters of men. And, it's the problem for us, so that's what you lose. And then, of course, the models, what Washington is actually doing, because he's not declaring it. We lose that as well, because he is more an action person, right? He's not a theoretician, although he also tells the world what he's about in The Story of the Negro, the rise of the race from slavery. The whole book is about his feelings and thoughts about African people and African culture, and our victory over the institution of slavery once in the United States. But it starts with our origin in Africa, our culture, our language, our proclivities, all of that. And it was written in 1901, published in 1909. But because the conversation of the day in the United States was about activating those social and political rights that we had gained with our blood in the Black freedom movement, and 14th and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution that we fought for, that comes out of the Black freedom struggle. So 14th Amendment is the amendment that allows anybody in the world to come to the United States and become a citizen. But it comes out of the Black freedom struggle. It is the naturalization laws. It is equal protection under the law, right? So that's the 14th Amendment. And then there's the 15th Amendment that gives voting rights. Those two amendments to the U.S. Constitution come out of the Black freedom struggle. And Du Bois is a child of that age, of that era. And so he truly believes in all of that. He believes in the enforcement of those amendments that afforded, naturalization, citizenship in every way, equal protection of all our freedoms. And then, of course, most of all, the right to vote, to be represented in the political landscape. So he is championing that. And when Washington writes The Story of the Negro, it is during that time. So it is sort of, shucked. They, like, what is he writing about? I don't know that anybody opened the book. It seems that they didn't, because then people would know everything that is being said in my book and in other places about Washington, which is that he had a deep love and commitment to Africa and African people. And he too wanted to go to Africa, connect with the people, but he wasn't a religious person. So he's not that interested in being a missionary, although that's the only way he knew of people going to the African continent. So all of that is lost when you can negate Washington. You know, they pretty much defined him to us. There's a scholar who wrote an article about 100 years worth of scholarship written on Booker T. Washington, and I assure you that most of them are white Americans. You know, thinking that they can define Washington and engage all of that, and so this is why.
Reminds me of a couple of quotes. One from John Dessalines, and he was famously said, "If I
hold on,
if I surrender to them."
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
But hold on a second.
Yeah. Listen, brother, what we're going to do now, actually, it's 1:15. We're going to go on. We are going to open up the chat. If you want to join us and engage with our sister, we can do that now as well. Been a lot of technical setbacks today, sister and brother, but we're still persevering through. I'm going to try and link up my laptop again at some point, see if it can connect, because it's a lot easier. Let's have a look and see. Let me check the comments. Greeting, brother Kwame Obraja. Ashe to you as well. Booker T inspired Africans to re-educate, self-develop, give thanks and praises. All right, let me try while we're doing that, see if I can get my laptop set up again, because it's a lot easier to do it on a laptop. So let's try. So yeah, there you go. Back with us. Okay, thanks. Right. So I was going to say, a couple of quotes spring to mind. John Dessalines. If I surrender 100 times, with 1,000 times, I'll betray them 100 times or 1,000 times. That's one. So it's almost like in our minds, we're not allowed to lie to white people. So because we say something, it has to be what we really mean. Or they lie to us all the time. I think Hakim al-Budi calls us their lie testers. The other quote I'm thinking of, which underscores a lot of it, is by, again, Baba John Henrik Clarke. People rise and fall within the context of institutions, never rise any other way, never fall for any other reason. And it's interesting that a lot of the critics of Booker T. Washington don't seem to be interested in building institutions. They can talk politics, they can critique this, that, and the other, but they'll build nothing. Again, this is Messiah saying, this is why we know that Booker T. Washington inspired Marcus Garvey, because he was looking to replicate initially, in first instance, the Tuskegee model in Jamaica. That's what it was about, and even to this day, the current day critics don't seem to be interested in building institutions, and it's amazing. And so we can see why, like I said, it's clear why. If we had that mindset, where would we be? How different would things be? Of self-reliance, self-determination. And so, yeah, that's really important. So, sisters and brothers, anyone wants to come through, you can feel free to come through. We are heading towards the close of this very brief session, but hopefully you found it very insightful, sisters and brothers. And get the book. Sister Tyrene, so best way to get the book.
Okay, so let me tell you, and it's so funny because I'm talking to a group in the UK now, and it's been a struggle. So, side note, so that's your friend and cousin that I met up with years ago and gave him.
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. That was smart because we were having so much trouble getting it delivered.
Yeah.
UK, and the cost and everything, you know. So
Yeah.
the U.S. service makes it pretty expensive. Okay, so the book is on Amazon. I have approved it for Canada and UK purchases, but you would have to just go and see on there what you know, they say. If you're Amazon, you all have Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah.
You have Amazon Prime, so yeah, so this way they would absorb the shipping if possible. But the other way to get the book, right? The book has its own website. It's called Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. No abbreviation. Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. The book is cheaper on that site. However, if you're in the UK, the shipping is exuberant. I think it's fair for one book. I think it's somewhere between, at one time I thought it was about $15, but it could easily be about 20. The shipping is comparable to the cost of the book. So the book is $20. The shipping is somewhere around there. So that's an unfortunate thing. However, I'm working right now because I'm preparing for a conference. I'm working right now to transfer the files to the digital version of the book so that people can go online and get, you know, the digital copy, an ebook copy.
Right.
So we will see how fast I can do that in the next couple of weeks before this conference. And it's just a matter of the files being available and, made available. It would be on Amazon and a couple other platforms, and it would be much cheaper than a hard copy, even though, listen, I'm like everybody else. I like a real book. The digital copy just does not do it for me. But I understand when you're talking about internationally. Now, the book is like being used by universities in South Africa and Zimbabwe and other places on the continent, but we had people who brought bulk orders to those institutions and students there and things of that nature. So, you might want to get together in groups and maybe do that. I'm trying to make an order like that happen with a group in the UK now. I don't know if it's going to happen because it's sort of touch and go. But generally, if you could do it as a group, buy the book, that would probably be a better way to do that. You can go on the website and contact me through Wix, the book website, and I will communicate if somebody's interested in doing a group order. Otherwise, wait for the digital book. Or see what Amazon says. The book is on Amazon. It is in stock at this point. I would do a Google search for the title of the book, Booker T. Washington in Africa, on Amazon, and see what comes up. But it is there. And I see somebody probably on the somebody's on the website, or multiple people on the website right now. I can see that. And it gives you a great deal of information. Someone said to me, "Oh, you give too much information on the book's website," but that website predated the book, and then the first copies of the book were made available through the website. So yes,
I would say, sisters and brothers, I would say even if it costs a bit much, it's worth it. Even if the packaging, the shipping is a lot, it seems like a lot, it's worth it. Get the book. I mean, you've heard aspects of the book. There's so much in it, sisters and brothers. It really is invaluable. It's something which, like I say, it overturns about a century of misinformation. So this kind of stuff is invaluable. And what I did say before you came on, I like about it as well, it's very easy to read, that younger people can get into it as well. It's not like it's not written for, you're not trying to impress the academics with your mastery of the language. You're trying to say, here is the narrative, here's what he done, and it's so a teenager should be able to get into the book as well. So we think it's very important that we try, sisters and brothers, to get this book. So even if it means a few extra pennies, do it, because it's necessary. So right, I'm going to try and go into the chat because I can't. I'm still on my phone, and I can't see it too good. Brother Kwame says, Sister Tyrene, I will purchase a copy of your book. Give thanks, Brother Kwame Obraje. Brother Kweku, give thanks, Brother Kweku, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Tyrene Wright, for vindicating our hero, Booker T. Washington. Give thanks and praises, Brother Kweku, as well. Sisters and brothers, you can still come through. If you want to come in live, you can do so as well. Brother Vincent, the brulee served. I can't even see this properly on my phone.
Is this in the
chat? This is in the chat. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can come on again on this dreaded laptop.
Oh, I can't even
see it makes it
that, huh?
Let me see if I can see it. Let me come in and see what happens. Let me.
And so one of the things that, we must push, all of us, is this fundamental question of the global nature of our African identities. That we stop, to see ourselves as Nigerians and Gabonese and, Ghanaians and Congolese and all these other nonsensical identities that we have. But not just that we talk about them like we're talking now, but that it's actually, embedded in our spirits, in our psyche, and in our approach to our work. Because those of you, who are on the continent know that we face, this crisis of religion, this crisis of ethnicism that is tearing us apart. And the only solution to that is going to, to start to address things and see things as a global body. And that when we speak of a Federation of African States, we're not just referring to us on the continent, but that we are coming to the table with all of our power. And our power means the millions of Africans in the diaspora. That there's that clarity of understanding. So it's not something we just talk about or we preach about, but that we actually begin to implement.
I love that. You have to tell me.
Right.
Who is that woman?
That's Sister Affion. Sister Affion Affion. Planetary for many years here in the UK. She's now based in Nigeria. Part of the.
Sorry, opportunity. Your mic is very hot.
Your audio is.
It's hot.
It's very, very loud and muffled, distorted. It is, but it's very quiet now.
What about that? Is that any better?
Perfect.
That's better.
Right. Okay, right. So I see the level now. Right. So yeah, that's Sister Affion El Affion. She was based here for a long time, but she's now based in Nigeria. So yeah, very powerful sister.
I love
serious warrior. Yeah. Right. Dr. Wright, can you cite the speech made in the U.S. Congress by a congressman who said that the blacks had surpassed the whites from emancipation into the 1990s? That's from Brother Vincent Henry.
Can I recite
the speech made in the U.S. Congress by the congressman who said that blacks had surpassed whites from emancipation to the 1910s?
Okay, so it's in the book. He doesn't give a speech. It's in the context. So this person must be familiar with this book already or something, because I'm not sure how you would know that other than from here, unless he's talking about something else. But in this book, there is an account of the debate on the floor of the House in the Congress, where a congressman talks about the fact that Black people had surpassed that of whites in most areas of life in a very short 50 years. And he's very specific because he's saying 250 years of slavery, 50 years of freedom. These people are looking us eye to eye in various areas of life. And if they were any other group of people, we would be praising them because their story is an epic story. That's what he says, an epic story in world history. No other story like it. And so this is some of the arguments made on the floor of the House of Representatives as the African exclusion measure is being debated.
Mm-hmm.
His name escapes me at this moment, but there is a revised and expanded version of this book that's going to come out. And I'm going to lay out more of this specific conversation on the floor of the House of Representatives, because there's a ferocious debate about African immigration, right? So the Senate had passed an amendment to the larger immigration bill of 1915. And what they did was they included in the larger immigration bill a one-liner that said, exclude anyone of the Black or African race from the United States forever. And it passed with flying colors. Their amendment to the immigration bill of 1915 would now go to the House of Representatives, where it would be debated. And it's Booker T. Washington who found out about it, began to propagandize against it in the Black press and sort of air them out, and then put his secret network, the Tuskegee Machine, into action. And they went to Washington, D.C., and basically infiltrated the Congress and directly challenged individual congressmen and held up the Congress and got a polling of various representatives so that they wouldn't waste their energy talking to people who, were already on their side, and could target the ones who they needed to address. And it is successful, but he mounts the greatest attack against this racist piece of legislation, which would have changed the U.S. and our cultural makeup in Black communities from that point on, and certainly closed the door to the numerous students that were coming from the African continent to Tuskegee and other places in the U.S. for education. As you guys know, we have 117 historically Black colleges and universities. And Tuskegee was also one of the ones that had a steady flow of students from the African continent early as 1893 and beyond. And Washington didn't want to lose that. So it is in the context of that ferocious debate on the Congress floor that this congressman makes that statement about the scope and the epic victory that we have had over the institution of slavery and the progress that we have had post-slavery, those first 50 years. But just so people, because you all are outside of the U.S., most of you, something you have to, I want you to understand about this context. We made rapid progress right out of enslavement. And the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution had something to do with that. We're in politics. We're in every level of government under radical reconstruction. But once there is a change of regime in the U.S. Government, President Johnson that comes after that, he would roll back the clock on us and reverse everything that was done in that first 50 years. So really what you all, even here don't understand this, but we're living in the backlash of the progress that we had our first 50 years out of enslavement. Because we had numerous sustainable Black communities. Everybody knows about Black Wall Street, you know, Greenwood Section of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all of that. But Tuskegee was a sustainable Black community that actually never got destroyed. And then there are others that did. Most got destroyed. Most got destroyed because of the proclivity for violence of white Americans when they can't compete or don't want to compete. They have the willingness to engage in unbelievable waves of violence.
Indeed, the continent one. So just to clarify, Brother Vincent said he is familiar with the book, so that's obviously why he asked that question. Let's go to some of the comments again. Brother Nat Nye, hail up Brother Nat, and can't hail you up without hailing up your Queen Sister Stella B. Greetings, family. Great show. Yes, the group is the Garvey Village Poets. We covered Booker T. Washington in our Revolutionary Minds project. Dr. Tyrene Wright's research was critical for us, so there you go. So they bigged you up on that session, Sister Tyrene, because they study a historical figure and do some creative works around it. And when they did Booker T. Washington, obviously they tapped into your vast resource of work as well. We've got Brother Kwame Abaja on the line. Brother Kwame, are you there? You coming through?
Tenda, my brother Tunji, how are you?
There he is. Greeting, Brother Kwame. How are you doing? I'm doing very well, my brother. Fighting the gremlins.
That's good. That's good.
So,
Tell my sister Tyrene.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm well.
Good. I'm very inspired by your teachings about the great Baba Booker T. Washington. He was a very great man, I tell you, because he inspired Africans to do things for ourselves, using the skills and the studies to uplift ourselves. It's a shame that Baba Marcus Garvey didn't get a chance to see him because he passed away, I understand, before Baba Garvey wanted to come and see him. But with Baba Booker T. Washington, he was doing the right thing. He wanted Africans to do things for ourselves. Well, on the other hand, that Debus, he was thinking that he knew it all. Because Debus was always picking up, you can laugh, it's the truth, but Debus would always pick up a fight. And I know my colleague, Brother Tunji here, will agree with me. We always will pick up a fight with either Booker T. Washington or with Marcus Garvey. Debus, you could say Debus is, he was clever, fair enough. But Debus went too far. He felt that he knew more than Garvey and Booker T. Washington, which is nonsense.
Yes, they're very interesting, the three of them. So you all are a very educated audience. It's usually a surprise for people to find out that Booker T. Washington inspired Garvey, gave him the model that would become the UNIA. So the UNIA model is based off the Tuskegee model as a result of the 1912 International Conference on the Negro at Tuskegee, where 8, educators from Jamaica come and visit. And so this is where you get the idea for the school, because it's in a part of the conference resolutions to create a Tuskegee-like institute in Jamaica. But that being said, Du Bois was a particular individual. So this is why you see what I consider a sharp and rather extreme rejection of America in the end for Du Bois, right? He's someone who was just going to make them live up to enforcement of the 14th and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution, which would have gone to the heart of most of our issues here in the United States. He doesn't see that, not even with a PhD from Harvard, not with, working with whites in, various organizations, the NAACP, not with the creation of his own secret network, the Boule, not with, working on socialist lines, He tries a number of things, and he is convinced ultimately that the United States is not going to act honorably as it relates to people in America, and doesn't care to. And so he ultimately he expatriates. Nkrumah says, come here. But I will say that Nkrumah said about Du Bois. He said Du Bois was certainly a Pan-Africanist, but he was not.
I beg to differ, Sister Tyrene. I mean, I don't know. I beg to differ because I know all the others. But Garvey was a Pan-African first before Du Bois. Du Bois that time was with the NWACP, wasn't he?
Okay, hold on one second. Did you hear the last part of what I said?
Yes.
He was a Pan-Africanist, but he was not a revolutionary, and that's a significant difference. He had a Pan-Africanist sentiment, but he wasn't necessarily revolutionary. But okay, can you state what you were saying again?
So when you repeat again, I've felt that because that time Du Bois moved to Ghana. When Nkrumah invited him, that's true. But that time he was with the NWACP. He didn't know much about Pan-Africanism because he was with the Civil Rights Movement. Would I say, is that true?
No, not really. No, it's not completely accurate. Because, so in the book, I talk about the first Pan-African conference.
Right. Yeah.
1900, and
that's right.
And is involved in the plenary sessions, and he is the one who promoter. A lot of people don't know this. Everybody knows Du Bois and the first Pan-African conference, but there in the background, doing the planning of the first Pan-African conference is Booker T. Washington talking to Henry Sylvester Williams and saying that this is simply going to be a conference, but this was going to be a movement being put on its way. Washington is saying he is the one who includes Du Bois in this first Pan-African conference. They attend some of the plenary sessions together. However, Washington doesn't attend the actual conference in 1900 due to his commitment to Tuskegee, and Du Bois does. Now, people who play in the pseudo-conflict conversation think that Washington doesn't go because Du Bois is going. They are in a good relationship in 1900, okay? So there is no conflict of sorts at that time. And next time I come on, I'll talk more about the pseudo-conflict.
No problem.
Really, a little bit today, but it's I love to dispel the myth of this conflict between them. But that Du Bois ends up being the sole survivor of the 1900 conference. Of the another way, of the people that would attend the first Pan-African conference, all of them would be dead within a couple of years. And Du Bois, 1919, when he initiates the congresses, the Pan-African congresses, which are the think tank for African leadership to engage in, the ideological struggle that would develop into liberation struggles on the continent. Du Bois is the sole survivor and the champion out of that conference. So in other words, everyone from 1900 conference is dead by 1919. And so the spirit of Pan-Africanism as it relates to that. And he has the foresight to create this body called the Congresses that would engage in continuous work around African liberation, primarily on the continent, with the intention for it to reverberate throughout the world. So this is the thing about Du Bois. He, like Washington was less conflicted, but he wore a mask. Du Bois, I would say, truly conflicted because of his origin. Growing up in a white community, orphaned by 12, feeling entitled to go to Harvard and be in this white world, going to school with white children. He talks about that in terms of his conversation around double consciousness. He's conflicted. And so he is, so you can see that he's many people in the course of his life. And he is totally different. It's like saying, Washington, comparing apples and oranges. They're both good in their own right, but not to be confused one with the other. That being said, Du Bois, he does say in this essay on race, he goes through his whole sordid genealogy, and we wonder why as you're reading it. And then he finally ends with it saying, I am a child of Africa. What is Africa to me? And he ends with saying he is ultimately a child of Africa. As conflicted and confused as he is, he understands ultimately he is a child of Africa. And so,
Okay.
you know, that
All right,
he's not a Washington.
I better let you go. Yeah, brothers.
Indeed.
Yeah, let others speak though. But Sister Tyrene, I'll get your book, no problem. You take it
Yes.
easy, yeah? All the best.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Take care, brothers. Take care.
Give thanks, Brother Kwame. Let me just go to some of the comments that I didn't see earlier. I couldn't see on my phone earlier. I will say, though, there's a narrative that the Congresses really were created in response to the Garvey movement, because we know they had the conference in 1900. I believe Henry Sylvester Williams died in 1911, and then the first Congress is 1919, and then whole other story. And also when he's in Africa, 62, he's writing to Gus Hall, the Communist Party of America, to come back to join them rather than staying in Africa. So it's a interesting legacy, but it's conflicted. I think that's a good way to describe it. Let me go to Brother Vincent Henry. The Boule serves as a system for the benefit of the system and themselves. Booker T. Washington tried to manipulate the system to benefit the communities, for the broader community benefit. So yes, give thanks for that, Brother Vincent. Rich African elder, by the way, Booker T. Washington had the sense and acumen with an African commitment to leverage Black power. Here's another question, Kimbunga Media. Who does our sister claim founded Tuskegee? Up from slavery, Booker T. Washington got money from the Hampton benefactor and had only an old church and a shack with land and raised Tuskegee. So there's a comment there from Rich African Elder.
So let me just say this. The initial money to start the institution doesn't come from Armstrong. Armstrong really didn't have anything to do with the founding of Tuskegee. It's the people, just so you know. Tuskegee is born out of the community, people who had survived enslavement and claimed victory over the institution of slavery. It was Lewis Adams who is the conceptual founder of Tuskegee. And he was formerly enslaved, and he was a political force during Reconstruction period, 1865 to 1877. And so post that time, when Tuskegee is founded, 1881, after engaging an incumbent politician on the state level, he had organized the Black Vote of Tuskegee, which they were very progressive at that time, in favor of this particular politician, Foster. And so afterwards, Foster comes back to him and says, what do you want for having organized the Black vote in my favor? And Lewis Adams says, a school for my people. And it doesn't end up being, so he could have asked for anything, personal favor as a result of this political favor he had fulfilled. That being said, he doesn't do that. He says he wants a school for his people, and Foster goes back and gets an allotment from the state of Alabama to pay for a teacher only. No building, no supplies, no nothing. Just $2,000 a year for teachers to teachers' salaries. The land would be donated by the community, people in the community, Black people who have survived slavery. It would be housed in a one-room church, AME church in Tuskegee. And Washington would arrive on the recommendation of Armstrong. Okay. In 1893, Booker T. Washington would then do something significant, and he would tell the state of Alabama to keep their little $2,000 a year, that he was going to go out on the road and raise money for Tuskegee with Ford. And he made people independent. from the state of Alabama, no affiliation in that way. And that is why today Tuskegee has a peculiar classification called quasi-private, because when he initiates the second charter in 1893, the school is totally what you would like a nonprofit entity that belongs to the community, essentially. So, but let me say this about Henry Sylvester Williams. Henry Sylvester Williams, so a lot of people get this confused with the Pan-African history. Henry Sylvester Williams and the African Association, they are the initiators of the first Pan-African conference, right? And the congresses would be initiated by Du Bois 19 years. You're friends with me on Facebook. Scroll down my Facebook page. There's a picture of one of the Pan-African Congresses that Du Bois is in. I think it's 1945. It might have been the Manchester Conference.
It was, yeah.
That was there in the UK.
And that's the one he probably had least to do with, because he organized the other one, but that one he was there as an elder statesman, as it were. But some of the others have people like Harry Johnson, the colonialist, H.G. Wells. It was a very interesting, and they, very, that's not for another time. But contrary to some of the comments in the thing, I mean, if you study the content of those congresses, I think some of that confliction comes out as well within some of those, because you can't invite colonialists into a conference that's calling for liberation on the African continent, but that's another story. Let me go to some more comments, but I certainly will do that. What's this? Some Black American claim Washington supported immigration restrictions to restrict labor competition. Is this true?
Can you say it again?
Right. Some Black Americans claim Washington supported immigration restrictions to restrict labor competition. Is this true?
Oh, so they're talking about the they're talking of, so they okay. Yes, but the person is not specific about the immigration. So yes, Washington's can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Cotton States Exposition speech, infamously known as the Atlanta Compromise, is a challenge to European immigration. And a lot of people take it out of its context, don't know the context at all. And what's happening is there's consequences for that speech, okay? Serious consequences for it. However, yes, Washington is arguing against European immigration. And think about it, it's 1895, and not Du Bois, 1895, and Frederick Douglass has passed or has recently passed, and there is a need for a new leadership of the Black community. You know, Washington is appointed that, but this speech is dubbed the Atlanta Compromise because the people later on do not understand the particular context. He's saying, you know us, right? You know us. He's talking to whites. You know us as it relates to us being here together. You don't know these European counterparts of yours that are coming from Italy and Ireland and all of that. And that's the period, right? The turn of the century. Huge Irish and Italian immigration to the United States, both groups which are marginalized in Europe. And they become the new immigrant population in the United States. But he's saying to Black people who are, post-slavery are not thrilled to engage whites, because this period, 1895 to 1915, is known as the nadir, and one of the most violent and savage periods in American history. You could send pictures of lynchings on postcards, and they were proud of it. So just a fiendish kind of level of violence that took place here and went unchecked. And so most Black people didn't want to deal with white people during that period. And there's many letters to show this by the American Colonization Society saying, I want to leave and go anywhere but here. On and on. There's a lot of documentation to substantiate that. But he is saying to Black people, we can be as separate as the fingers on the hand, and unified as the hand in all things that are mutually beneficial to us. In other words, some people have questioned whether Booker T. Washington was a separatist. I would say he was more that than not, because Tuskegee certainly is not an integrated model. It is an independent, sustainable African community at the turn of the century. And so, if you go with what Washington is talking about, he's saying, the chance to go to the movie house, go to a movie and mingle with whites, he would rather go make $1. In other words, he's telling you he did not want to socialize. And he didn't think that we should be socializing with whites. That, I'm just giving you my direct interpretation of what I know his personal opinions and his utterances are in the public realm on that. But that speech is very controversial because people take it out of context. It appealed to people at that time to a certain extent, but the ones who are looking for him to talk about social and political rights in light of those Reconstruction amendments, 14th and 15th Amendment, they're greatly disappointed because they're looking for social integration. And Washington is not really a supporter of that.
That's an important point to make, very important. Let me go back to some of the comments as well that I've missed earlier. Brother Kweku says, Africans in America this I think referred to your comments earlier. Africans in America outstripped whites in 50 years after slavery. Wow. Yet Obama said that we have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. The insult. So
yeah. And just so you know, of course, you all know who Obama is, and Obama is not somebody who ancestors contributed to our Black freedom struggle. His American ancestors are white Americans, so they would have been the ones struggling against and all of our freedoms. So that's a very interesting criticism.
And do we have a Obama Mark II on the horizon, female version now?
Yeah, pray for us.
Yeah, people are very excited.
That's good energy. Who knows?
I can imagine. Right, let us begin to wrap up there, Sister Tyrene. Apologies for the technical issues. A bit torrid at times, but I'm just glad we did this because, again, there is so much of this narrative, this story, and not only through the book as well, but there's so much in and around that you probably couldn't get into the book as well. So we need to really continue this conversation because I think there's a lot of work to do to restore Booker T. Washington to his rightful place. And I think, if I'm going to be blunt about it, elements of the Black left are quite vociferously against Booker T. Washington. And I think we need to take the challenge to them as well. Because they're just disparaging. It's almost like a matter of fact, it's not even an argument or a debate. It's just a set out and that's it. Move on. Thinking, well, but no. When you start building institutions like he did, maybe you've got grounds to begin to think about a critique. Until such time, negotiate and juggle the things he juggled. I think it's amazing, and we have to really study this legacy.
Oh, yes. Thank you for recognizing that, because let me just say, you hit you got it. You got all of it, in the sense that, the book was supposed to be strictly published in the academic arena, and I took the book back, and you probably see my interviews that I did where I said, no, I decided to grassroots this book and put this in the people's language. The academicians had dropped the ball, and while I, gave them a little of the business in the preface, the book was for our people, the mass of our people, and to be in our people's language and accessible to our people. So I am trying to describe and recount and recall very complex things that happen with our people, in the simplest way, because I think that, that's what I respect, right? I don't respect talking the academic language. I mean, I'm an academician and I can run circles around them, but but the point is that, to say the simplest, most complex way does not denote intelligence. To say the most complex thing in the simplest way is what I respect. And I do think that it's intelligent. And so I wanted this to be in the people's language. And so I'm glad I took a lot of, I transferred a lot of my life force in writing this book. So I'm glad that it landed and, it hit home with you all the way in the UK.
No, it shows. From the time you heard it, I think, let's credit Shakara. I think the first I heard about it was the video on YouTube that he sent the link to. I don't know how many years ago that was. That's where I first heard about you. And then we heard about the book, and then we started pursuing it. But the term we use is warrior scholarship. You're there to take the battle to the enemy through scholarship. That's what we need.
Yes. Yes.
So
Thank you so much. Yes.
No. So let me just say, I don't think I said it earlier. Just a big thank you for this gift to the African world, because it is necessary in this time.
Thank you.
We're struggling for examples, and there's one massive one, influential one, which, I mean, I suppose if a lot of our people in America know nothing about it, much less the African world community.
Right.
If you've been kept from you all over there, then certainly a lot of us aren't going to know about Booker T. Washington other than what filters through. And if he said something, he compromised, and that was it.
Right.
But the lay you give it is that not only did he build institutions, but the Pan-African aspect of it as well. So key to put it, especially in the early days of Pan-Africanism, really. Just like you said, there's not a knowledge around his involvement in the Pan-African Conference of 1900, all that kind of stuff. So so important, sisters and brothers. So I'm hoping, sisters and brothers, you've really taken something from this session, brief as it's been. Get the book, because there's so much more in there than what we've able to cover. But we need to carry on this conversation, because the example is there, sisters and brothers. So, any last words you want to say, and then we're gonna wrap up the session there.
Well, again for having me on. You made it work against all odds, and I appreciate. I appreciate your support. And so I do want to tell you that I started an organization called Global Africa Works earlier this year, and it's still in process, but it really basically is an organization that seeks to carry out some of the work that I speak of in the context of the book, right? Producing sustainability programs for the African world. So stay tuned. You're going to get more information about that. Everything is not up and running just yet, but I'm promoting the Tuskegee model, independence through industry. And that's another thing. Even though I've written the story of the Tuskegee model in here, there's still more work to do with the academicians who don't understand what the Tuskegee model is, and put misinformation out in the world. And so I want to sort of address that. But really at the core of the Tuskegee model is this idea of sustainability for African communities around the world. And so that's what we have to strive for, to be independent. The resources are ours, on the African continent. and we've got to just advance our independence and the thinking and the understanding that, you know, we have not only the resources, but we have the knowledge, right? We have the knowledge, and so that we can use that to our advantage. So I appreciate, again, you inviting me on here. I'm surprised we haven't done this, because I've done different talks with people in the UK, because I'm surprised we haven't done this already. And I appreciate the invitation. And I want to hear more about what you guys are going through in the UK, because we're seeing it out here, and we support you, and we see people fighting back, and we like that, and that's good.
We'll talk. Yeah, I said earlier, this session is years overdue. I don't know what happened, but years overdue. But nothing before its time, I guess they say. So yeah. Want to hear Reparation Nation joining us in the chat. Also, Atem Ajak, greetings from Africa, Nairobi, Kenya. Greetings from Kenya, our brother Atem. So yes, give thanks. You got here right at the end, because we're wrapping up now. But yeah, we're going to say thank you to Tender. So yeah, that organization, let us know the progress. We can feature that as well on our platform as well. So sisters and brothers, this has been MOSIAH Session, the Pan-African legacy of Booker T. Washington, with our beloved sister Dr. Tyrene Wright. I hope your belly is full with inspiration from the legacy of Booker T. Washington. They tried to hide it, and our sisters uncovered the legacy. Let us engage, and let us, more importantly, do what she's doing, trying to reinstitute, revive that legacy of self-reliance, self-determination, nation building, institution building, sisters and brothers. That's where we need to be right now. African people around the world are feeling it, and this is the way to go. This is the way to go, sisters and brothers. So yeah, so on that note, sisters and brothers, we do have our closing words. So let me just do our standard closing words, sisters and brothers. Let us remind ourselves to take all that we've learned, all that we've shared, the knowledge, information, and inspiration out into the streets, into our personal lives, our place of work, a place of study, among families and friends. Let's remind ourselves always to be a shining light unto Africans everywhere. The Africans everywhere know that Mwari, the Bokurane, and the Sudume, the African god, reigns supreme. The Africans everywhere know that it is a joy to be an African, and the Africans everywhere know that liberation is indeed at hand. And what we say, sisters and brothers, our refrain in this month, we always say, Garvey lives, MOSIAH lives. And indeed, we need to say this evening as well, Booker T lives.
Yes.
And indeed, he does, sisters and brothers. So thanks and praises, sisters and brothers. That's our session for this evening. Thanks for joining us, and keep supporting our MOSIAH session. Those in the UK, please come down this coming Sunday to the Caribou Centre, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the official launch of the Pan-African People's Parliament, Nation Building in Action. Tender my sisters and brothers. Give thanks and praises.
Drums of MOSIAH on the 17th of MOSIAH, August. We join the international call to gather with Africans around the world in honor of the birthday of the most honorable Marcus MOSIAH Garvey. Bring your drums, your shekere, agogo, umbira, your balafon, all percussion, and huna on a drum. Bring your dancing feet and join us as we raise the vibration in honor of our ancestors. Taking place on Saturday, the 17th of MOSIAH, August, from 5 p.m. at Windrush Square, Brixton, SW2 1JQ. Drums of MOSIAH. This is an event not to be missed.
Marcus MOSIAH, forward and lead thy people out of Babylon.
They trying to send us another Moses, but make him lay down there in him bed of roses. Send him on. They trying to send us another Jesus Christ, but we want a man they betrayed for upon our rise. That's the man we really wanna see. They preaching about black want the man they betrayed for upon a ride. That's the man we really wanna see. Go there now. God, they taught us to be dignified and proud, proud of being black. He taught us that Africa was where it's at. Moses never knew about that. Yet still they're trying to send us another Moses, but make him lay down the inner him bed of roses. Send him on. They're trying to send us another Jesus Christ, but we want a man to be betrayed for upon our